everybody? Here we are today doing our CFL season previews, and we're going to be covering the Saskatchewan Roughriders in this one. So before we get started with it, please make sure to subscribe if you're new to me or the CFL, whatever the case may be. That being said, let's get on into it. So last season kind of felt like 2022 in the sense where the Roughriders started off relatively well and then had a late season collapse as they also end up finishing with another 6-12 season and once again failed to make the playoffs when they probably should have. Now, there's a lot of things that changed in this time from last season to this season. We're going to be talking about all that. So let's get into those storylines, if you will. So the first storyline is whether or not this is the beginning of a new era. And this certainly is. Whether or not it's going to be successful is the question. So Craig Dickinson, after two 6-12 seasons, again where things went really bad, ends up getting fired. The good news for him is he does have a job with the Calgary Stampeders with his brother now, so that is awesome. But for the Roughriders, they end up getting Corey Mace and having him be their head coach. Now, Mace is a very fun and interesting name because he was the Toronto Argonauts defensive coordinator. This is somebody that was able to, in his time as the DC for Toronto, get pressure and get turnovers, or force turnovers, if you will. Both big things for Saskatchewan, as last year they finished dead last in the league for sacks and then only had 19 interceptions on the year, which wasn't, bottom of the league by any means, but they weren't out there like Toronto going out and getting a lot of picks and that nature. Now, the good news for Mace, if he's looking to have a good start to his head coaching run, is the fact that Saskatchewan was tied with Calgary for the fewest penalties last season defensively. That is all very good. However, they were getting lit up like a Christmas tree towards the end of the year where they're allowing 30-plus point games on a regular basis. That is concerning for a guy that obviously has got experience trying to make a team be a Grey Cup contending side. So yeah, that's going to be an issue, and you have to wonder a little bit too, is the offense actually going to get better? We talk about Trevor Harris being back in the lineup and being healthy, at least for now. That doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to go out there and the offense is going to improve. He could be rusty. Age could be an issue. Maybe they don't all gel, as you do have a lot of new additions. But those are all concerns that Mace will have to figure out in terms of getting this team back on track, because 2019 and 2021 were really fun. They made it to the Western Final both years and had good seasons. Especially 2019 was a really good year. But if you look at all this, Winnipeg's kind of been in the way, obviously, and they haven't made the Grey Cup since 2013. So for a franchise that is very passionate and loves this team, the province in general, just Rider Nation is probably the most passionate fan base in the league. I don't know, that might be controversial for some of you. They want to be able to see this team go back and get to the Grey Cup and win it, because that's not really been a norm for them, and Mace is going to have to figure out how to do that. And I do want to add too that if this season goes well or poorly, probably going to be an indicator of how long-term a relationship this will be. Again, this is not saying that Mace is going to be expected to go out there and win the Grey Cup this year, but anything less than probably a 9-9 season or better could be hard for the fan base to swallow as they want to get back to the playoffs. Second talking point is, can AJ Ouellette bring the run game back? So last season was, again, for the Roughriders, bad in certain areas. The run game was one of those, as they had the lowest yards per carry in the league, and they had the second fewest rushing yards per game. Now, this is not on Jamal Morrow entirely at all. In fact, he had some really good games, but the offensive line was dealing with some things, which we'll talk about a little bit later. You had quarterback injuries, which also impacted this, and you had some games that would get away from them. So when you know that you could be a one-dimensional team, or you're having a day where the quarterback is not going to be able to throw the ball very well, or you're playing a good defensive side with an offensive line that's dealing with a lot of things, you could see a world where you are struggling to run the ball. Now, Morrow is out, and he is not with Calgary. He signed with them, but he failed the physical. I'm not exactly sure what's happening there, as I haven't heard anything with him. But you do see AJ Ouellette come out in here, and he was one of those big signings that they were very excited to have, as they did get a pair of guys from Winnipeg and, of course, Toronto that had success with their teams. Now, AJ ended up having over 1,000 rushing yards last year, but more importantly, that was in 15 games played, and that was less than 200 carries. So he had a yards per carry average of like 5.7, so nearly 6 yards per touch. Going to be really incredible to see there too, because he has the ability to take over games. He has the ability, especially when you are inside the 5, you could trust him to be able to get those hard-earned yards, and it does allow for Saskatchewan to be a little bit better off. And I do think with Trevor Harris being in the lineup, if he's healthy, while we said there's no guarantee the offense is going to be better, there is the potential to be a little bit better overall as a team, because you're going to be less one-dimensional. You have AJ out there that could provide that spark in the run game, and you have the ability to know that when you get in the red zone, maybe you could switch it up a little bit. Now, will the Riders go on to be the top running team in the league this year? We can't say that for sure, and I'd say probably not, as there's going to be some other teams that are probably going to be sticking up there. But I would say that if the Riders were, dead last in the league for yards per carry again, that would be a huge concern, because what are you doing and what's going wrong here as to why the run blocking is not going well, or maybe AJ is underperforming. And then the final talking point is whether or not Saskatchewan's getting back to the playoffs. So this season kind of resembles last season, I think, in the sense where you have BC and Winnipeg probably being the top two teams. And I'm not really sugarcoating that. I do feel like they're probably going to be those sides that make the playoffs. So that leaves realistically one spot out west before a potential crossover. But with it, you see an Edmonton team that looks better, as we did our season preview over them yesterday. They have two quarterbacks in McLeod Bella-Thompson and Trey Ford that could provide a spark for them. They ended up getting Javon Leake. They ended up getting Boris Beatty. So special teams play should be better for them. And then the Calgary Stampeders, they are a side looking for redemption, trying to build off of what was a better end of the season. Again, 2 wins to close out the regular season to get to the playoffs, and the loss to BC, while not great, could have been worse. So I guess you're seeing 3 teams trying to compete for that final spot once again. But if I am being honest, I am going to probably be picking Saskatchewan here to get that final spot, at least in theory, at the start of the year. I think when you are looking, especially compared to like Calgary, and probably Edmonton too to some extent, their run game is going to be looking better for the Riders. Their receiving core is really fun, and of course, you could get a good year out of Harris. And I think in general, the offense probably will be better because you have Jamarcus Hardrick that they brought in, and then Philip Blake is also going to be coming back and hopefully being able to play a full year. He didn't play a whole lot last year, so the offensive line could be looking a lot better. Saskatchewan ended up giving up like 53 sacks on the season. That total could be lower. They could score more points. They could just be in a better spot there. Now, defensively, I do think you have a little bit of a reason to be concerned, as you had a team that is going to need some work, and they had some issues where they allowed some yards through the air. They had like the second highest yards per attempt against in the league. That's a concern. Missing pieces from their secondary from last year, at least one of them. And you have a linebacker core that is going to be without Larry Dean as he retired. So there are some things that could be holding them back, but I do see the opportunity there to go out and be better than 6-12. And you have to remember, last year Edmonton went 4-14. Are they going to win 4 more games and be 8-10? Is it going to be enough to where Saskatchewan could win 3 more games and be a 9-9 team? They could be even better. It really all just depends at the moment. But this team has not made the playoffs since 2021. At the moment, it feels like they probably have a good chance. So overall, what are my thoughts for this team? I think Saskatchewan is one of the most exciting teams to watch at the start of the year because the offseason was so fun for them. They may not go out there and be the best team in the league. In fact, I could probably bet money on that. But they could be the most improved team in the league by the end of the year. Whether that comes down to them being a 10-8 team compared to 6-12, I don't know. But this year, the West could very well be a slugfest where all 5 teams are battling it out. Maybe it's not, but with that final playoff spot, the Riders have a lot to play for. The first 3 weeks of the season, I think, are especially important for them. Maybe it's another team that I'm doing season previews for, but the Riders are there, and they have the potential to get back to winning ways. They haven't missed the playoffs 3 straight years since like the late 90s, very early 2000s, so it's been a good run kind of for an extended period. Some years weren't as good as others for the fans for a good long while now. So you don't want to go back and continue to have another losing record when this team should be much better than the 2022 and 2023 teams. If this team finishes with like 7-8 wins or less, that is kind of concerning. If they finish with 6 wins or less, Mesa's tenure very well could be a lot shorter than we thought. But anyway, what are your thoughts for the Saskatchewan Roughriders entering this season? They have a big game against Edmonton in week 1. Let me know all your thoughts down below in the comments. And also, please make sure to like this video and subscribe if you are new. Everybody, please make sure to stay safe and have a great night.